Hey everyone, I'm Mike Settele, and this is step one of the 10-step study plan for basically any SAT that you're going to take. And in this step, we're going to focus on the strategies. But before we begin, let me just say congratulations on getting this far. I know it's only step one, but lots of people don't ever organize their prep, and many more than you think don't even prepare for the SAT at all. They just show up and hope for the best. So you're already ahead of the game just by watching something like this and having a plan as you go through the material. Now, the goal for this step is to make sure we understand how the SAT works. We want to learn the rules of the game. And I think that that's a really good way to think about this, is that you want to treat the SAT like a board game or a card game or something like that, where you don't know the rules, right? You've never played before. You might have played something similar, but there are rules to this that you just don't know. And if your friends just kind of gathered you around a table and handed you some dice and some cards and were like, okay, it's your turn, you wouldn't really know what to do. You wouldn't really stand a chance. You'd probably lose that game. So that's how you might be feeling right now. And that's a good feeling to have, because as you learn the rules, you will get better. You'll be more competitive. And eventually, yes, hopefully you can win this game. So we're going to focus on making sure you're going into the real SAT with a better understanding of the rules of how it works. And yes, the SAT is a reading test. It's a math test, but it's so much more than that. So even if you're in advanced placement classes, honors classes in school in those subjects, doing really well, getting great grades, there are things about the SAT that might challenge you because, like I said, you don't yet know the rules. But just like any other subject, as you study those rules, if you learn them, you can get better and improve. So now let's take a look at some specific tasks that we're going to want to accomplish on our way through this step. So different things we want to do, and just make sure you check the description for this video. There are going to be links to all these things that I talk about in there. It's a great way to just be like kind of a checklist. So most important thing is we want to start off with my 10-episode strategy series playlist. I made this when the new SAT came out. It is very, very good, and it's great for telling us the rules of all the different kinds of questions. So through those 10 episodes, you will cover pretty much every type of question you would see on the SAT. So it's very thorough in that respect, but it's not really thorough on the topics of the question. So we're not going to hit every grammar rule, every math formula. That's not really the point at this stage. We're just trying to get a sense of how the big picture questions work. We will worry about individual topics as we go. But after each episode in the series, there will be a few practice questions that you can try. Some of them will be publicly available for everyone. Others, extra ones, bonus ones, will be available to my paid channel members. So you might want to look into that if you want even more practice. It's a great way to just practice without using the official resources. Beyond the strategies, you also want to make sure you know the rules kind of just like the formatting of the test. So some of you might know this already just from experiences with the exam already. Maybe you've done a little prep before, but I do have videos on this that I'll link to about the formatting of the exam. I want to make sure you understand the timing and the scoring, and especially the way that the adaptive testing works. You really want to make sure you understand the difference between the easy and the hard module. I'm going to talk about that a lot in the lessons and things like that. So you want to have that lingo down. Also, you might have taken a PSAT and you might want to interpret those scores of it, kind of see what things you were doing well on and struggling with. So all of that is in my frequently asked questions playlist. So make sure you check that out. Speaking of PSAT, this gets to the last item here, this optional item. Do you want to take a PSAT practice test? Well, probably most of you don't want to, and that's fine because most of you don't have to. Most Americans are going to take a PSAT through their high school. You're going to probably take it in October of junior year. So if you've done that, then you're good. You have a set of starting scores. You know what you're doing. You've kind of had a little bit of experience with the test. So you don't need to take another practice test right now to understand where you're starting from. You know, that's what the PSAT, the real PSAT was. Sometimes if you're maybe starting a little early, you don't have that junior year PSAT yet, but a lot of people also take the PSAT in sophomore year, either in October or sometime in the spring. I don't care how long ago that PSAT was, that's a good sense of your starting score. If you were to take another one, you'd probably get a similar score, so it's not really worth your time. Now, if you never took a practice test before or a real test before and you've no experience with the SAT, maybe it makes sense to start off by taking a PSAT practice test to kind of get that starting score. But even for you, I don't think it's super necessary. If you want to just kind of dive into the strategies, that's okay with me. So only do it if you're really feeling like you want to just get that experience. But regardless, make sure you are not taking an SAT practice test. We only want to use a PSAT practice test because we don't want to waste those SAT practice tests. You're going to need those for when we're actually ready to take SAT practice tests. So that's an important theme throughout all of this 10-step plan, is we want to make sure we're not wasting practice tests. They're a great resource, but they're not the only resource. There's a lot of better ways to practice. So if you are going to take a practice test, make sure it's in the Blue Book app. Make sure it is a PSAT practice test. I recommend practice test number 2. I have other videos about this to make sure that you use the practice test correctly. So you might want to jump ahead and watch those first. But definitely don't take a practice test before you're ready. We are not ready yet. We will get to that in step 3. Now let's just make sure we're thinking about all these questions in the right mindset while we're watching these videos and answering the practice questions. So as you watch the lesson, some things will be confusing, and that's okay. We don't need to memorize every single strategy and rule right away. We're going to be fine. And that's especially true if I start talking about some topics that you don't really remember. Maybe you're a little fuzzy on like quadratic equations or something, and that comes up in one of my videos. That's okay. You don't need to memorize that stuff now. Just think of the topics as kind of like the raw material that I'm using to explain the bigger issues, the bigger things about strategies. And that's how we should think about not only watching the videos, but answering the practice questions. The highest priority is that you're using and thinking about the strategies. We really want to make sure you're doing that. The lowest priority is speed. I am not impressed with the number of correct answers you get, how fast you do them. You are missing the point if you were trying to just rush through all these practice questions. Our goal is to try new things. So you've got to really make a conscious effort to try out the strategies that I teach you. That might slow you down. That might take a lot of brain power to do. And now this is especially true with people who kind of think of themselves as like math geniuses. You know, the people who are in AP Calc BC in sophomore year and doing straight A's in all their math classes. Yippee for you, but I am not impressed. And quite frankly, those are the people who tend to have a very surprisingly low math score on their SAT because they're not open-minded about new ways of solving things. Math works for them. They know the traditional methods. They've always worked, and they've worked well. So you're not really open-minded about new ways to approach these questions, and that closed-mindedness is going to cost you points. Again, the SAT is partly a math test, but it's more than that. So yes, in some of these lessons, in some of these practice questions, I will show you easy questions, easy math questions, and you will look at it and think, this is so easy, I can just solve it this way. But I want you to go slow. I want you to force yourself to use this strategy, even when it's not efficient, mostly because you don't know what's efficient yet. Right? So one thing is that the strategies are actually often faster than you think. People think they're not efficient, but it's just because they never try them. And then once they do, they're like, oh my God, that actually is pretty fast. At least it's comparable to the traditional textbook method that they would have used. But also the strategies get faster as you practice them. So yes, they might be slow and inefficient now, but if you force yourself to practice them, you will get faster with them. And suddenly you might see that they are faster than the traditional methods you were using before. And most important in all this is so many of the hard questions are going to have different paths to the answer. Maybe we use a strategy. Maybe we use Desmos. Maybe we do some traditional algebra on our scratch paper. That's all good. That's fine. But in order to figure out what path in what case is the most efficient, we need to open ourselves up to those different paths. So right now, yes, even when you use a strategy and you are convinced that it is inefficient, you've still learned something. You've learned, okay, on questions like this, I don't think I'm going to use this strategy. I think it's faster to do it my way. That's okay. Everyone's going to have a different sweet spot for where it's better to do it the old way versus the new way. But you've got to figure out where that sweet spot is. So that is our priority for this step, is that you are open-minded and you are trying these new things so that you can start to have more options when you get to the truly difficult questions. And yeah, the easy ones, maybe you still do them the old-fashioned way when you get to the real test, but you need to practice the strategy on the easy stuff so that you're ready to use that strategy when you really need it on the hard stuff. Trust me, I've been doing this a long time. When I take the SAT, I am using these strategies, even though I know how to do it in a more traditional way. So you got to trust me. I know what I'm doing. Be open-minded, and I think it'll pay off in the long run. Now, before you go, a couple other things here. This step of the process, this step of our study plan should take several days. Don't try to rush through all 10 episodes in just one night. It's not good. You're not going to learn anything. Basically, you want to be doing about 2 to 3 episodes a day. If it takes a little longer, but it sticks with you, that's okay too. So make sure you are not just prioritizing watching videos and getting through questions. You are prioritizing doing so in a way that improves your knowledge, that improves your comprehension, and your understanding of the rules of this SAT. It is not just about getting through these 10 steps of my study plan. You actually have to learn things as you go. Now, if you made it to step 1 here, if you made it all the way through, give me a like on this video. That way we know you made it, and we're going to see how many likes we get as we get through step 3 and 4 and 5 and 10 and all that stuff. If you do have questions about this step, please put them in the comments. Once again, I'm Mike Settele. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in step 2.